because I didn't just feel broken. I felt shattered. I felt like I could never be put back together. When I had that breakdown, and I absolutely felt like that there was nothing left of me, and I could not fathom how I could possibly put myself back together, how I could ever like myself. Definitely couldn't imagine ever loving myself again. I'm not sure I ever really did.
Hola, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 38 of our Let's Start Healing podcast. And you know what we say here, we have more in common than we think. And what we have in common can change the world. This episode is brought to you in part by BE Decor's Interior Decorating and Styling Company, where interior decorator Lynetta Chanel Duncan will creatively personalize and style spaces in your home or office to complement your quality of life. BE Decor's specialty is creating living spaces, including she caves. Chanel Duncan's idea for she caves comes from her passion for helping women practice self-care. She caves are offered under the brand She Works, She Slays, She Caves. Visit BE Decors at bedecors.com. You can also find BE Decors on social media at BE Decors. Our guest today is someone who resonates with a lot of people. Her name is Melissa Petrashock, and she is going to share her emotional and spiritual journey in coming through an abusive marriage. And one of the things that we don't often talk about when we talk about abuse is emotional abuse and verbal abuse. That is something that Melissa endured for years, and she's going to talk about several suicide attempts that she was blessed to have survived. And she just has a very amazing and interesting story and is very empowering. She is someone who absolutely, obviously felt hopeless, and is an indication of, no matter how low we get, we are not alone. There is help, and there is a more hopeful, fulfilling road ahead, no matter how low we get and no matter how alone we think we are. So let's meet her, let's get started, and let's start healing. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. And you just are an amazing person, and I'm excited for our listeners to get to know you and hear what you came through and about your spiritual path and what you're doing now. So what brought you? You live here in the Atlanta metro area, and you were just telling me that you came here a few years ago, about 4 years ago almost.
It'll be 4 years in June. June 1st of 2016, I moved here. I finally coming out of a over 15-year marriage that I needed to get out of for my own sanity, for my own survival. I needed to get out. And my sister lives down here. And so when I told her, I was like, I'm looking to move. My therapist said, if you don't move far enough away that you really completely separate yourself, you'll never get out from under the control and kind of that toxic relationship that I was in. And so my sister's like, come down to Atlanta. You'll love it. It's the best. And of course, she's been down here for several years. So I was like, sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else I'm going to do.
And your story, I think, is very healing for so many people. Share what brought you here and what you were experiencing in your marriage.
It's kind of hard to explain, I guess, is when we first met, when we first got married, of course, you're in love and everything seems great. And I ignored a lot of red flags, I guess, the controlling tendencies and kind of some of the disrespect that I chose to ignore. I tell people now, when you see the red flags, run. Don't think that you're going to change those things.
Right.
But I think I went into it thinking, it'll get better. That's nobody's really like, that's he'll change, he'll get better, and instead it just kind of got worse. And I blamed myself. It was my fault. I wasn't doing all the things to make him happy. I wasn't, being a good enough wife. I wasn't being a good enough mom. I wasn't, I took on all the responsibility because he constantly blamed me. It was constantly, if I was doing this, I'd be better. He'd be happy if I was doing this. But I kind of discounted how unhappy I was.
Right.
And so I ended up in late 2008, early 2009, I had a complete and total mental breakdown. I was suffering severe anxiety and depression. I had 4 suicide attempts in about the span of 6 months.
No kidding.
I just could not take it anymore.
And was this a result of verbal abuse or physical abuse?
No physical. He never laid a hand on me. Never. My first ex-husband did, and I survived that much better. Bruises heal. It's the damage of the way that it was more mental. It was just a controlling environment that I just felt suffocated and incapable of being myself, incapable of voicing my own opinions or my own thoughts. Anything that disagreed with him was talked down and degraded, and it was emotionally suffocating for me. And I think not enough women realize that is a form of abuse. When you don't feel safe to express yourself, be yourself, and be comfortable being yourself, then that is a form of abuse. And it was really that kind of toxic environment of just constantly feeling like I had to be what made him happy. I had to live the way that made him happy. I had to follow his rules. I didn't really have the right to self-expression. And when I did, it was always, was blamed for my behaviors. Trying to be me was always blamed as being a problem to him. Right. And so it was just very difficult to deal with.
and I mean, it had to be for 4 attempts. Wow.
Yeah. 4 attempted suicides in the span of 6 months. I just reached a breaking point. I could not take it anymore. I couldn't live like that. I had no sense of self, no identity to speak of. I was his wife and my kid's mom, and that was it. I had no sense of who I was as a person. It had just diminished to the point that over 8 years of being married, that I just lost myself.
Were you in touch with your family as this was going on?
I was, yeah. I mean, we lived in Massachusetts for several years and then moved to Kentucky where my family's at.
Did they know what was going on?
No.
Oh,
it was that standard.
You kept it to yourself.
Yes, it was that standard, where like everything on the outside looks perfect. We were the perfect little family and presented in such that idealistic, I was a stay-at-home mom and he had a great job and he was, this, attractive, wonderful guy. And, I was taking care of the kids and just everything seemed so perfect. And, I didn't talk to people about it. Yeah. I was so embarrassed about what I was dealing with and just felt so stifled that I just didn't feel comfortable expressing that to anybody. And when I had the breakdown, I ended up in a mental hospital for about 3 weeks, getting put on meds. I was diagnosed as bipolar, which has then later on been discovered that it was more of a situational, the depression and the anxiety. I've not been on any kind of medication for anything, not bipolar, not depression, not anxiety since 2016, and have been better than I've ever been in my life, more just satisfied with my life, happy, stable, capable of dealing with life better than I ever was before. And so it was really, I was told it's situational depression, situational anxiety, and that certain situations that in narcissistic abusive relationships, you often end up being diagnosed with mental disorders, bipolar, whatever, because you get blamed for it. You end up taking on all the blame, and they play the victim. And so that was really what it came down to is
this is your problem. This is how you are.
That I was the abuser and he was the victim.
He was just living with
that
this,
around.
Conditioning you.
Yes. And then as soon as I was out, I started that recovery and kind of discovering myself. And it just, opened my
Amazing.
eyes that, wow, here I've taken on all the blame for everything, all the acceptance that this was all my fault. But why is it then when I'm not in that situation, I'm not living with him, I'm fine.
So when you were in the mental hospital and the attempts to take your life, did your family, did they become aware of it at that time? Or were you still coping with this all alone?
It was starting to come out. I had been having some conversations with my sister. My sister was, the crazy thing is, so my sister, I moved to Massachusetts in 1999, and my sister went to college in Texas. We both left Kentucky at that time, went completely different separate ways, in completely different points in our life. We had very minimal contact for about 10 years. We'd, see each other at holidays and stuff, but we didn't really reach out and try to, maintain any contact. So then when I ended up in the hospital after the fourth time trying to take my life, my sister finally came and she was like, oh my God, like what in the world is going on? She was so unaware of what had been happening that she had no idea what a bad situation I was in, what a bad place I was in. And she flew she was in Oklahoma City at the time, in Oklahoma to Kentucky to see me. And it was just that realization. We had let 10 years go by that we kind of fell apart from each other. And she had no idea that I was in such a bad place. And so that was kind of a big turning point then, because now my sister and I, we're in contact, whether it's a text or a Google Hangouts message or a Snapchat or something, like every single day. We have some kind of contact with each other. And it's enough that I moved down here to Georgia because of her. And that was, I needed that. And rebuilding that relationship was a huge impact on my overall recovery and finally leaving and getting out of the marriage. Because it's still, it was still years that I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm bipolar and I have this anxiety and this depression and I'm just a mess. Here I am, I'm a hot mess, and he's being this wonderful, knight in shining armor, saving the day and being here for me. Little did I realize or accept at that time that he was the one that was causing all those issues. That it was him creating this problem.
So I absolutely, I believe, know what you're saying, because I have been not in anything, I don't think it was that extreme, but certainly I've been in relationships when I was younger where there was verbal abuse, and I was very, very, very unhappy. And I'm not even focused on what makes me happy because I'm so unhappy with this person and I just want them to change. And so I was just wondering if you could share just some of the details of what you would experience that would impact you so much.
It was really just that sense of I needed to be the person he wanted me to be.
Yeah.
I was going to stay at home mom, raise the kids, and then at the same time, well, you're not contributing anything to the household. You're not bringing any money. So then I'd say, okay, well, when we lived in Massachusetts, I remember I tried to start a daycare because he would complain. Like, he wanted me to be the traditional housewife, stay-at-home mom, but at the same time, then it's like, well, you can't do this or that because you're not contributing any money. You're not allowed to spend money because you're not contributing money, except the whole agreement that we had is that I would stay home with the kids. So then I'd try to start a daycare, and then he'd be like, well, you're just spending too much money trying to do this, and that's just a waste of time. And so it was like that in every aspect of life. I'd say, okay, well, I'm going to try to do this because that'll make things better. But if it wasn't his way that he wanted things done, it was like, oh no, now you're just making things worse.
That's real. That money thing is real.
In
terms of equality and them seeing, whoever it is, whether the man has more money or the woman has more money. Not all the time, but I've experienced that too, where they make more money, and so then I'm not seen as an equal, and then that control comes in. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And so were you taking pills, or what happened? What took you to the hospital when you were trying to take your life?
It was overdoses. I tried multiple overdoses, various and assorted types of medications. So it was...
I can't imagine what inside you must have been, the pain that you must have been feeling.
And, you know, it's crazy because I look at now and I'm like, how in the world did I ever get to that point and like not see that that was coming? You know, I think I was just so sucked into, I was such a terrible person. I wasn't able to make him happy. I wasn't able to be good enough, and just let myself get so destroyed.
Yeah.
That I was just shattered. I was taking all the blame for everything and just didn't understand that I deserve to be happy too.
Right.
And
Right.
so that really fed into
That's
all of it.
common to us, to women, I think. How long were you in your first marriage?
Only a few years. It was a very abusive relationship. So,
Really?
yes, and that was so after that divorce, and then getting in and getting married again to someone that also turned out to be abusive in a different way.
It's deceiving.
It was very much. I ended up. The first person I dated after I came out of my marriage was another copycat,
Right.
Basically another narcissist. I'm like, wow, there is something wrong that I'm attracting this kind of guy. I'm allowing that, I'm being too, whatever, empathetic, codependent, whatever that is attracting this type of guy. So 2017, I said, you know what, I quit dating. So I've actually not dated since then because I was just like, yeah, I'm done. I started going to school, decided to work on earning my bachelor's degree. That was something, I got pregnant with my first daughter when I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Didn't do the college thing, went straight into getting married and having my kids. And so I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do.
Right.
I brought up going to like doing school online to my husband at the time a few different times, and he's like, no, if we're going to spend the money on getting education, I'll get my master's degree, that's going to be worth more, and just kind of like it made sense at the time, but then looking back, I'm like, why was my education never important? Why was anything I wanted to achieve for myself not important? So finally I turned 40 in 2017. I turned 40. I quit dating. I started school. And I just started really focusing on myself.
Right.
And so that was really, I realized I needed to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Not just physically, mentally, but, just emotionally, spiritually, just every aspect of me needed to be taken care of.
You're the priority.
And I couldn't move forward. I couldn't allow myself to get into another romantic relationship until I figured out myself and got my, my own mental house in order, because I didn't want to attract that kind of guy all over again, because I just was repeating that same over and over again, ending up in these toxic relationships.
Yeah. And
I was devaluing myself and not, I was looking for somebody else to make me happy, and devaluing my own, myself, my worth as a person, and my ability to be happy without somebody else validating me.
Right. No, I understand and I can relate. And one of my things is that I enjoy being with successful men. And so if I become involved with a successful man in the past, there was that inequality there. And so it's about what I attract, but it's also about what I'm attracted to. And so I decided that I was going to start being open to all different types of men. But then I came to realize, well, I like a certain type of man, so I can like a certain type of man, but still not accept those things that are not healthy for me, because what's important is to be an equal.
Yes.
That's the thing. Wow. Your journey. I love self-discovery. I think it's just the most exciting thing when I'm talking to people and they're going through a journey of self-discovery like you are, or like I feel I have in my own journey. What was it like coming to Atlanta and the type of community that you've built for yourself or created for yourself?
I mean, at first, the only person I really knew was my sister. But I knew that, my sister and my daughter who moved with me. I decided I was going to get into the workforce and found a job and made some connections, but realized that it was not everything I wanted to do. I was not really satisfied with that. Ended up finding another job, it was better in some ways, worse in some ways. But I think, for me, that was all about self-discovery too. It was figuring out, since I hadn't been in the workforce for, 15 years, then what did I want to do? What did I want to achieve?
Right.
And which direction did I want to go? And so that was kind of a whole, up and down figuring myself out. And I really wasn't focusing on relationships, especially once I decided to stop dating. Like I just started focusing very internally.
Yeah.
But amazingly, once I started doing that, about a year later, I kind of fell into the career path that I'm on now, that I love working as a financial advisor for a company I've actually been a client of for years and years. So it's a company I was very familiar with. And I enjoy because I'm helping people.
Yes.
And that's what I really the pieces that I liked of the jobs that I had at first when I first started here. I liked the aspects where I felt like I was helping people. And so I realized what I really wanted to do was something where I was helping people. And in the process of really getting focused on that and finding that my passion is really helping people, I started making connections and meeting people and other women that I've kind of been building my little tribe.
Yeah.
The people that really, that I vibe with.
Yeah.
There are other women that also have very positive outlooks and positive attitudes and have come from things in the past. They've gone through stuff and recovered from it.
Right.
And found themselves stronger and better. And so it's really...
So does that make you stronger and empowered?
It does. Yes. And so through that, I met several different people really in the past year has been where I've, it's kind of that first year was figuring out I'm in all the wrong places, doing all the wrong things.
Your first year in Atlanta?
What do I need to do? Yeah. 2016 to 2017. It was that figuring out this is not what I want to be doing with my life. What do I want to do?
Yeah.
Doing all right, I'm sick of being in bad relationships. I need to take a step back from that. Well, I really want to get my education. I need to take a step towards that. Trying to figure out the career path that I wanted. So that was kind of 2017, 2018. I was figuring that out. 2018, I landed in the career that I'm in as a financial advisor. Love it. Absolutely love it. So
are you in a particular area of in the financial investment industry?
I work with life insurance and retirement savings, and so kind of that's really my space. So not like stocks, that kind of, I don't want to do that. There's a lot of risk associated there that I just don't want to. I don't want to be into that. Not my space.
I interrupted you. 2019. What did that look like?
Okay, so 2018 is I finally got into the right career direction I wanted to be and got into that. So I hit 2019 saying, all right, now I need to start like building my network and connecting with people, not just the job aspect of things. But so I started going to networking groups because I was like, all right, I need to do this for career path anyway, and I'm going to meet other women. So I really started focusing on women's networking and trying to meet people that way. Then with some of the success that I had, I decided to start renting an office rather than I was working from home. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start renting an office so that I'm getting out and being around people, putting myself out more around people. And through the women's networking that I was doing, moving into an office space in Roswell, and then is getting invited to be the financial advisor in another closed networking, women's networking. I started really finding my people and making these connections. And so the past year has just been this more satisfied self for me, where I'm finding all these people I really vibe with. And one of the women that I met back in January, has been over a year now. I met her in the Flourish networking group. I don't know if you've ever taken part of that. That's a national, it's a women's networking group. And I met her through that. Well, we met up for coffee one time, and I was kind of, we're just talking, kind of talking about what we've come through and stuff. Right. And in talking, I was sharing some of my stories, sharing some of my history and what I've been through. And she said, girl, you need to be like speaker or something, like, you need to be sharing this with other
Yeah.
people. Like, you don't realize how many women need to hear that you can come past that and like get through it and recover
Yes.
and be so much better
Yes.
and happier.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, like, that's a little crazy. Nobody's ever said anything like that to me, but okay, so kind of took it with a grain of salt at the time, but it kind of kept, biting at me. And just, just every once in a while, like, she's right. Like, there's, I could see a value in that, but no, nobody wants to hear from me. Right. So I kind of talked myself out of it until I finally decided, all right, I don't really want to do something that's about me, but I definitely want to do something that's being a positive influence for other women. So I started the Women's Motivational Meetup group.
Oh.
And so we do a monthly meetup where it's a discussion group. And so I just facilitate it. I do not, run the meeting. I'm not preaching to people. We talk about some kind of motivational quote or a positive quote. And then, there's usually 3 questions, and we just kind of go through and, discuss.
What type of questions might there be?
So it depends on the quote, but it's kind of breaks down to like how, what do you think this means? And then how do you apply this to your life? And then usually they'll ask questions like, what did you hear from the other women here today that you feel like was why you needed to be here?
That is so great. That is so great. So do you decide on the quote, or who decides what the quote will be?
I facilitate it. I come up with the quote and the questions and let the discussion
Beautiful.
go where it goes. And it's every single time. It is absolutely fantastic.
Where is it located?
I actually hold it in the Tiffany from Unique Occasions. She hosts us in her event space in my office building. She rents space there in the same building. And so we hold that there. And it's the first Thursday of every month we do it.
And
so,
is it a 2-hour?
about an hour. Yeah, about an hour. So we try to, because we do it in the morning, 10:30 to 11:30.
Okay.
Everybody pays $5 because I get, tea and coffee and some breakfast stuff. And we sit around and have breakfast together and have a discussion. And that is now growing into, I think I'd mentioned to you when we talked on the phone that I have a new project I'm kind of going with. So I am taking the concept of what I'm doing with the Women's Motivational Group and building that into a brand of positive kindness for women. It's going to kind of culminate in several different things, but I'm planning on launching the website and blog for it in June. I've already started this week. I started with the Instagram for it, posting positive quotes. We're branding it as Kind Chick Life. So it's going to be kindchicklife.com, and we're going to have a blog with it. It's kind of in partnership with my sister, and my daughters are both kind of involved in it as well. I've been talking to several of my women friends that are in kind of that positive space, and talking about this. I'm working on a book that's going to be related to that. Basically 10 key lessons that have helped me live a life of inner peace and transformation over the past, that's really over the past few years, where I've really come to these key realizations of how to live a better life. And then there's some other aspects to it that are kind of in the works. But eventually I'm hoping to launch in 2021, essentially like a 5-week course that women can sign up for, where we can kind of go through a self-discovery, where I just facilitate a self-discovery similar to what I went through, but figuring out some of these things that took me so long to figure out, but facilitating them being able to do that.
That's so essential.
So it's that self-discovery. And then on top of this, the Women's Motivational Group that I've been doing, I want to launch that as an opportunity for people to start their own chapters across the country, where all the information they'll need to facilitate their meeting each month will be on the website. They'll be able to log in once they've registered to start a chapter, and then they'd have access to that. So the discussion topic, the questions would all be on there, and a blog associated with it, maybe a podcast, that sort of thing, where they'd have some kind of toolkit to then facilitate their own local meetings. So if they don't want to do breakfast on the Thursday, the first Thursday of the month, like I do, they don't have to. Everything would be launched. So the first of the month, all the necessary information to facilitate their meeting, whatever day they want to choose, whatever time of day they want to choose, they'd be able to start their own chapters. So that all
is
in the
so,
works right now.
I mean, that's healing the world. That's healing the world. That's incredible.
I just feel like I'm trying to do my part to help other women not get in that same space that I was.
Yeah. And I think one of the crucial things is that it's really important for young girls too. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we can think of abuse as just physical abuse, mm-hmm. and then we can be so attracted or in love with the person that we're with that's not treating us well, who's not talking to us respectfully, and it's not a healthy situation. We think, well, we're not being physically abused, that'll just keep us there longer, mm-hmm. So I think that your story is so healthy and helpful to help people to recognize signs, to see their value, mm-hmm. to come to a place of self-love. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was my biggest, what took me more time than anything is figuring out how important just loving myself was. Yeah. And that was really, I think I went into 2017, once I decided to stop dating and focus on my education, I realized, I'm actually fine alone and mm-hmm. I'm happy. And I love myself enough that I don't feel lonely. Right. And I enjoy my time. Yes. And instead of all that mindset of, oh, well, he'll make me happy.
Right.
Which is not possible. That for so long?
Yeah. We don't know. We don't know until we know.
Yeah. But I think it's part of it is a societal influence where, mm-hmm. Girls are talking, oh, you'll grow up, you'll find your Prince Charming.
That's how we're raised.
Your other half of you.
Yes.
What?
You know what my thing is that I love movies. I mean, I will acknowledge mm-hmm. this. I've watched the movies where the man is difficult and he's resistant, but then he comes around. That used to be in my psyche. Oh, he'll come around. Oh, he'll change.
You can fix him.
Yeah, mm-hmm. exactly. Because those were the movies, mm-hmm. that I saw. That was the story.
I read somewhere one time that they said, women go into marriage thinking they can fix him mm-hmm. and change him. Right. And men go into marriage thinking she'll never change. And that's where so many of the problems come in because everybody changes, everybody grows. Right. He's not necessarily going to change in the way you want him to, and she's not going to stay the same. She's going to grow and she's going to change. And so I think we go into it with misconceptions mm-hmm. too often.
Exactly. So you mentioned that offline that you are in agnostic Buddhist.
Yes.
And is that in the last few years? Was that when you were in?
It's really been something I've come to in the last few years. I grew up in a very Christian home. Mm-hmm. As I said offline, my mom was a Sunday school teacher. My dad was a deacon in the church. Like we were always so involved in everything. And it was a great upbringing. I think everybody needs some kind of guidance in their upbringing. And I certainly, don't think there's anything wrong with how I was brought up. But I never connected really well as I got older. Different things happened in my life where I just never felt connected to that. I'd play the part because that was what I was taught I was supposed to do, but it really didn't come till later in my life that I realized that just didn't spark joy.
Right. And did you feel like you didn't have a connection to God?
Yeah,
And do you call God God or your higher power or?
I mean, I as an agnostic, I don't believe you can prove or disprove the existence of God. If mm-hmm. somebody really feels that is so important to them and they really feel that and they have that faith, more power to them. I believe more in a karmic life. You put positivity out into the world, positivity comes back to you. Mm-hmm. It's about being a good person and, mm-hmm. and living in the Buddhist traditions, more, right intention, mm-hmm. or wise intention, what you're putting into it, more so than, being right or wrong. It's putting in your best effort and the best intention towards things. And so that was what I found, like really what attracted me to Buddhism specifically is more that sense of responsibility for yourself, that you have to do the work to improve yourself. You have to accept how you're treating other people. You have to accept, those interactions and what you're doing. And, we're all interconnected. And so if you treat somebody else bad, that's
right.
That's not good, and you can't just go like,
Doesn't
oh,
bode
okay,
well
well, I'm
for
gonna pray and be forgiven. Well, that doesn't take away that negative action that, what you've done to somebody. You have to work through that, mend fences, whatever to make those improvements. And so it's been a newer thing for me, but I definitely feel very deeply connected to that. And so that's really the meditation, the sitting and focusing more inward,
right?
Clearing your mind, and then things come up, and sometimes it's, if something comes up, you can work through it. There's negative feelings or guilt about something, work through it. Don't carry that around. One of my Dharma teachers talks about, not carrying around a heavy backpack. You don't have to carry everything around with you. If it's important, you can work through it and set it aside and be done with it, and set it down. And so I find that's, especially in relationships and being a good person in relationships and how I'm treating people. If I realize I've wronged somebody, being able to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I was in the wrong, and let go of it, but don't carry around the guilt for it.
Right.
And if somebody wronged me, I may never get an I'm sorry, but you know what? I can forgive them because the forgiveness is for me, not them.
Right.
It's for me to move on. It's for me to let go, to set that down, unpack it out of my backpack so I have a lighter backpack down the road.
And so when you're meditating, do you experience a connection to something else?
I definitely feel like I feel more peaceful. And whether that's a connection to a higher power or just a grounded sense of clearing my mind and being very present in the moment.
Right. Another part of yourself.
Yeah. And I think that meditation is about that mindfulness, about just being in the moment.
Right.
And connecting. And so I've been trying to practice, mindfulness throughout the day. It's really easy to get distracted. It's really easy to kind of
I
be
talk
aware
about
of where you're
that
at.
a lot. Yes, I find that too. That's my goal is to shorten that gap because it's like I'm really good at prayer and meditation in the morning in that time, and I want to stay present throughout the day, but it's so easy to forget.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll come back, and so eventually, but I want to shorten that space of time of my forgetfulness.
But that's what it's called, a practice.
You're
is always
exactly.
practicing. You're never going to perfect it. You're always practicing, and you may get better in your practice, but it's always a work in progress.
Right.
And that's I think what I love about that spiritual aspect of Buddhism is that it's about always striving to be better, always to do your best.
Right.
And so it's always a work in progress. And you're never going to reach that perfection. And there's no guilt with not being perfect as long as you're always working to do better and to do your best.
Right.
And so, because I feel like, for me, growing up in a Christian environment, there's that guilt association of, you made a mistake. And so then you take on all the guilt for it.
Right.
And I'm like, that's just, that really
doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. And it doesn't really serve a good purpose for improving yourself. If you always feel like, you're always doing better, then you're doing better.
Right.
And you should feel, good about that. One of the things, I talk about to my friends and stuff is, I stopped competing with other people and just started competing with myself. Am I doing better today than I was yesterday? Am I doing better today than I was last week? Am I doing better today than I was last year? And okay, then I'm happy. I'm happy with where I'm at because, and so, it's about always being closer to the goal. You never really achieve the goal because the closer you get, the more you kind of move that goalpost out. And you're like, oh, well, if I can get this far, now I can push it out. I can do a little bit better. And so that's everything in life.
Yeah. I like the way you put that because sometimes I think about how much I've healed and how much I've learned and discovered. And then there'll be something else that's so huge that I have to learn. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it just never ends. Like there'll be something else and something else.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking I'm moving on down the road, which I am, but the game doesn't end.
And that's the thing is in the book that I'm working on, one of the life lessons is it's not about the goal. The goal is not the point. The journey is.
It certainly is.
Because the goal is the end point.
Right.
Then where do you go from there?
Right.
As long as you're constantly on the journey, the journey is the present, and so that's, ties into the Buddhist mindset of being present, being mindful. Focus on where you're at now. Stop thinking about the past, stop thinking about the present, because you can't rewrite the past.
Right.
You don't know what's coming in the future. So it's always about the now.
Yeah.
It's always about the now.
So what is the difference between Buddhism, like describe Buddhism, and then agnostic Buddhism?
There are Buddhists that are actually Christian and have a faith in God. And so that, there are Christian Buddhists. I choose to identify myself specifically as agnostic. I wouldn't say that I'm atheistic. I believe there is higher power out there, and I certainly believe that that other people believe that. It's the agnostic is, I don't believe you can prove or disprove it. So
sure,
just because I choose not to have faith in a God doesn't mean that it isn't out there and the other people don't have faith. So I don't want to discount other people's beliefs, other people's faith. So I choose not to identify as atheistic, but I don't consider myself a Christian Buddhist because
I imagine, because I don't know a lot about Buddhism, I imagine that if there are Christian Buddhists, there are non-Christian Buddhists, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And then there's agnostic Buddhists
because
as well.
Buddhism isn't a theology so much. You're not worshiping, Buddha's a teacher. Not a deity. You're not worshiping Buddha. It's about taking in those lessons and learning from his teachings. And that's really the difference. And something I prefer is not, I don't really enjoy the worship aspect of certain religions. I don't know. It just doesn't jive with me. It's not my vibe.
Yeah.
I love that Buddhism is about taking the teachings and applying them to your life. How do you practice
I love that too.
In your life to be a better person?
Right.
To be kinder, to be gentler. I've been doing a lot of work with metta practice, which is loving kindness. Having loving kindness to yourself, loving kindness to others, loving kindness to those that you have good relationships with, loving kindness towards those you dislike.
Right.
I don't feel that I need to have negative feelings towards anybody. And so forgiving people in my past, like my ex-husbands, it's forgiving them and being able to have loving kindness and wish them the best. It has been so peaceful for me.
It's a release.
I don't need it. Yeah, because it's one of the lessons, another one of the lessons from the book I'm writing is that hate isn't the opposite of love. Indifference is. So not being in love with somebody doesn't mean you hate them. That's still a passionate feeling. You have to have passion towards somebody to love them. You have to have passion towards somebody to hate them. When you've truly recovered from a bad relationship, you just have apathy. You genuinely don't care. It's that complete indifference is when you really let go.
Right.
And so that's what I've focused on is just, this loving kindness towards them. That's, I wish you all the best, but not my problem.
Right.
Not my monkeys, not my circus.
Right. Right. That's the second time this week I have heard that phrase. Honestly, the second time in 2 days.
Really?
Yes.
It's a great phrase, though.
It is a great phrase. And I'm glad you brought it up because I said, I think I'm going to use that. And I forgot it until you just brought it up. Not my monkeys, not my circus.
No. And that has been probably the most freeing, just the whole concept of forgiving people, even if they don't ask for forgiveness, because I need to forgive them to move on, and being able to have kindness and love towards all living beings, those that have harmed me and those who have not. It's brought so much more of a sense of peace to me.
Yes.
It just allowed me
Yeah.
to move on with my
It
life
makes a
and not
difference.
be hung up on stuff.
It makes a difference. I mean, I have a prayer that I'll say to people, not to people, but it'll be about, someone that I may not get along with. It might be about someone that I do get along with. And because I might be going into a meeting with them or something like that. And there's a definite good outcome. I can see how it benefits me and it benefits us when I say this prayer. And so you just described what you described. And to me, it really doesn't matter. It's what's behind the practice. I have one style of practice and you have a different style of practice. And we're talking about the same thing. And it's about what's behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about the love that's behind the thing.
Yes.
That is so important.
And I think you have to approach everybody with some measure of love.
Yes.
Just doesn't mean that you're in love with, that's a completely different romantic love, but to love all beings, all creatures, just to have that kindness and that love, that may everybody be peaceful and at ease,
right.
May everyone be well. May everyone be happy. And to have that kind of just general feeling towards everybody in the world, all people, whether I like them or dislike them.
That makes a difference. It seems like it's just us, like we're just sitting here saying that, but there's a reverberation to that.
Yes.
That's why I say you're healing.
Karma.
You're healing the world.
Yes.
But you're healing the world. I mean, you truly are.
See, I think of it as I'm doing the best that I can to help other people not end up in the situation that I was in. Because I didn't just feel broken, I felt shattered. I felt like I could never be put back together. When I had that breakdown, and I absolutely felt like that there was nothing left of me. And I could not fathom how I could possibly put myself back together. How I could ever like myself. Definitely couldn't imagine ever loving myself again. I'm not sure I ever really did. I was a rape survivor when I was 14. And so I think that it's such a young, impressionable age. I just never really recovered from that. And so I never really got in a positive headspace of loving myself, being kind to myself, being happy. I just was so traumatized from that. And I think that fed into getting into physically abusive relationships, emotionally abusive relationships, never being happy, always looking for something outside myself to be happy. And so my self-discovery has really been that the choice to be happy is within you.
Right.
You just have to accept it. You have to accept
and choose
your decision.
Right, exactly.
And so that's really been, not just my emotional journey, but a spiritual journey for me to find that in myself and to realize how important that is. So.
When you were at that point where you were shattered, was it a matter of a step at a time, a day at a time? What was it that helped you to move forward to now?
I mean, I had an amazing therapist. Actually, the third therapist that I had after I came out of the hospital did wonders for me of really focusing on the work in me and not external so much. Because like the other therapists are like, oh, you can do this to improve your relationship and your marriage will be better and this will be better. And
did you just say
that
you're
was some
fired,
stuff that needed to be done? No,
it
was just the where I was at. They just rotated out through some therapists, and I just ended up landing one finally, who really started. Like I was doing some internal work, but it was all about like how the things that I could do would impact my marriage, how the things I would do would make me have my marriage happier, and like fixing it. And it was really not until the third one, Beth, that she really started like the groundwork is you. It's all you. If you don't do the work on yourself, you don't make the changes in yourself, nothing outside of you is going to change. You can give it, a spackle job and throw some paint on it.
Exactly.
But you didn't fix it. You didn't tear down the wall and rebuild it. And that's where I needed to tear everything down to the foundation and rebuild and figure out, myself from there. And so that was really, that was my biggest journey, was just going through and figuring out what was wrong with my thinking that I was allowing myself to be in such negative situations and such negative relationships. And it's a one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, building on it until you get to a point where you feel pretty confident you've got a good foundation and you're building well on it. But I mean, the process has been years. Honestly, it's been years. The biggest part of it, really, some internal changes definitely happened in my thinking before I left the marriage, for sure. I would not have been in a place to have the strength to do that if I hadn't. But honestly, the biggest part of the work has been once I was out of the situation, didn't have that negative impact, didn't have that negative influence, and could really just focus on me instead of just surviving, because literally I spent years just surviving and not doing a very good job of it.
My goodness. So I really appreciate you, and I'm so happy that you're here. I have these questions that I like to ask all of my guests. I want to phrase them a little differently because the word I have in them is God. I'm going to phrase it a little differently, but I know that you know the point of the question. So I'm going to say spirit, or higher power or something like that.
You're not going to offend me. No. I take no offense.
I know, but I want to use the word that you relate to, which I'm probably not choosing the right word, but maybe I'm getting closer. So how would you describe your knowing or perception of something divine that's outside of you?
I mean, I think when I do the meditation and I bring myself to just a very peaceful place, I feel like that's probably where I feel most empowered by some kind of higher power or spirit. It's that peace, that sense of peace and I think part of it is just knowing that I'm doing the work to improve myself and to be a person that other people can count on and other people can trust and other people know that, I'm there for them. I'm not talking behind their back. I'm not, I'm that person that they can trust. And it's that work to be that positive influence on everybody that I touch, everybody I'm around. And I know it's that, I don't know, it's just that sense of peace.
Yeah.
Where you can sit in a room by yourself and just be peaceful. And I think it comes from the work that I've done, the internal work I've done. But I think that for me, I guess that's the spiritual side of things that I needed, is coming to that peace.
Right.
And it's really just, I don't know how else to describe it, but that sense of peace.
So do you most feel that presence when you're meditating?
I'm most focused and tuned into it, definitely. Or anytime that I can just, even if I'm not meditating, if I just have a quiet, peaceful time where there's not a lot going on. Definitely not when I'm sitting in Atlanta traffic, but not necessarily then.
Right.
But anytime where it's just quiet. If I go out hiking, or out for a walk and there's, not a lot of other people around, and just, it's that sense of stillness and that ability to be still that I think connects me to a spiritual strength.
Right. What do you think the spirit calls you to do for yourself and others through your work?
I mean, that's definitely what I talked about, realizing that I need to feel like I'm helping other people. That the passion that I feel for doing things that make me feel like I'm positively impacting others. I think when you feel that spark, you feel that passion where you feel intensely motivated and driven to do something. That's that's a spiritual push that this is what you need to do. So, I mean, what I do now with, working with my clients, on the financial side of things, definitely gives me a huge amount of satisfaction, in feeling like I'm fulfilling that, I'm helping people. But then the Kind Chick Life project that I'm working on is delving further into that and how I can really impact people on that emotional level to find that piece of themselves that they can grow and nourish.
Right.
And I think so many of us get tied up into toxic relationships or toxic mindsets, and getting past that. That's, for me, it's where do you find that passion where you just feel so happy and just at peace and satisfied that you're doing the right thing.
Right.
And that's when I'm influenced. I mean, I feel that way after every one of the women's motivational meetings. I always come out and just like, oh, that was so great. Like that was amazing. And
Right.
I'm glad that I started facilitating that, because what I get out of it and what the other women get out of it, that, tie the bond between us, it just, it's spiritual.
Right.
It is spiritual. And I'm probably the only one in the group that's not, really a practicing Christian of any type, but all of us feel that we feel that connection.
That's the word I was about to use, connected. Tell me about a time when you had a miracle or a blessing and you said, Spirit, something outside of me totally did this. I had nothing to do with it.
I mean, I don't think I realized at the time, but surviving the suicide attempts, that was, I actually just had lunch today with one of my friends that she also is part of my women's group, and talking about being given that second chance, third chance, fourth chance, fifth, to have survived.
Right.
I didn't survive for nothing.
Right.
I could have very well died.
Succeeded.
But I survived. And the fact that I was allowed to survive by some higher power was for a purpose. And maybe it's taken me this long with now working to launch the Kind Chick Life project that to realize how I could impact other people and how I could really serve that purpose. But I don't think I survived for nothing.
Absolutely.
There was a reason.
No.
I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
I was actually not very happy at the time that I survived, because I really was miserable. But years after I've recovered, after I've rebuilt myself, I realized that was a turning point. It was a turning point with building a relationship with my sister that I didn't have before, that we had kind of fallen apart for 10 years. It was a turning point to start realizing I needed something more. I didn't know what it was for a long time.
Right.
But now that I'm on the right track, I feel it, like down into the very marrow of my bones. I feel like I'm finally on the right track.
Yeah.
I know what I'm meant to do. And I love it. I love it. And when everybody I talk to about it says, yes, this is like, how have you not been doing this before? I said, girl, I was not ready to be doing this before.
Yeah.
I did not feel in the right space. But to have reached that was, I didn't know it was a miracle at the time. But looking back, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
Are you a healer or a seeker?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like for a very long time I've been a seeker. But it was because I needed to be healed first. And now it's about trying to heal others.
Yeah.
But I think it's a mindset of where you're at in your life and how ready you are. But yeah, I think I went from here probably in the last year. It's been that sudden or very subtle shift from seeker to healer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, before we close, I have 10 more questions. I'm kidding. How can people get in touch with you or learn more about Kind Chick
Yes,
Love?
Kind Chick Life.
Kind Chick Life.
So I will be launching the website June 1st.
Okay.
In the meantime, we are on Instagram. And that will be where we officially like notify people of the launch. I'm also working on the Facebook business page and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But if people want to connect with me, for right now, the best way to do that is really through Instagram, Kind Chick Life. And I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
You can
At
find
Kind
me
Chick Life.
At Kind Chick Life.
Okay.
Yes. They can connect with me there. And then when we're ready to launch the website and the blog, there'll be more information and that'll all be available on Instagram.
Okay. And the Women's Motivational Group?
That is on meetup.com. Right now, it's just a local here in the Atlanta area. As I said, I'm looking to build that out into something that there will be chapters around.
Right.
And so certainly stay tuned for that.
Right. But people might, if they're not in the Atlanta area, they might be coming to the Atlanta area and they might be here at a time that you're holding the group. So.
It's the first Thursday of every month. We meet at 10:30 and all the information is on Meetup. It's literally Women's Motivational Meetup is where they can find it.
It's Women's Motivational Group or Women's
Motivational Meetup.
Meetup
is the name of it on Meetup.
Okay.
Because I'm really just that absolutely capable of coming up with amazing titles for things. So yeah, coming up with Kind Chick Life was like pulling teeth because I am not the most creative person for just coming up with things like that.
Well, I like it. I like it.
But Women's Motivational Meetup makes it easy to find.
Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. You're an inspiration, and I know people are going to get so much out of what you've shared.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad you had me. This has been exciting, and I hope that it speaks to somebody.
It will.
That it helps somebody.
It will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse of any kind, there is a hotline and a website. The hotline number is 1-800-799-7233, and the website is thehotline.org. There are resources. We're in the Atlanta area. There are resources in the metro Atlanta area and all over the country and world. So you are not alone. You may also recall episode 33 when we had another guest who was a survivor of domestic violence, Sheila Bailey. And Sheila is the founder of a foundation called No Longer the Face. So that organization is another resource. Visit nolongertheface.com. Remember that you can listen to all of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Let's start healing.